Hi, welcome to Amigos Code. My name is Nelson, and in this course I'm going to teach you how to build a cool application where you're going to be able to drop some images from a front-end app written in React and then store those images inside of a bucket. So we're going to be using Amazon S3 as the leading cloud provider, and pretty much you should be aware of Amazon AWS services and products, and S3 is widely used throughout the industry. So knowing how to store images, files, videos, PDF, text, anything, it's a really important thing for you to know how to do it. So for this course, we're going to build everything from scratch. So I'm going to show you exactly how to grab the access and secret keys from Amazon console. And then I'm going to show you exactly how to bootstrap the application using Spring Boot as the backend. And then we're going to create our React front end that will talk to our backend. And then the backend talks to the Amazon S3 API. So there is a lot to learn, and I always suggest you to practice as I teach. So I don't want you to just sit and watch the videos, but I want you to practice, because that's the best way for learning anything. And then once you learn, you can take the skills immediately and apply them to your own projects, your own work, pretty much university projects and a bunch of other cool places. So there is a lot to learn. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe right now. And without further ado, let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and bootstrap our application. So navigate to start.spring.io, and right here you can bootstrap your application with Maven or Gradle. So let's go ahead and pick Maven, and then for the language, go ahead and pick Java. For the Spring Boot version, you can pick anything above 2, right? So Spring Boot 2 version 2. So if you don't see 2.19, you can pick anything that is 2 and then whatever. Then for the project metadata, so right here, go ahead and simply say your company. So let me go ahead and simply say Amigos Code, or your domain. And then for the artifact, I'm going to say image, AWS image, and then upload, something like that, right? And then you can go ahead and specify more options, such as the Java version. So I'm going to pick Java 11, and then I'm going to leave everything as is. And for the dependencies to add, go ahead and simply, so if I actually switch to this list right here, you can see the full list of dependencies. So the one that I'm interested is the Spring Web. So I'm going to pick that one. And then what I'm going to do is simply generate project. And then I'm going to save this to my desktop. And there we go. All right, now that we have this zip folder, let's go ahead and open up with IntelliJ. So let me collapse this, and then I'm going to extract this zip folder. So let me extract it. There we go. And let me delete this zip folder. So I'm going to be using IntelliJ for this tutorial. And if you want to learn about IntelliJ, I've got a full course on YouTube teaching everything you need to know about IntelliJ. So what I'm going to do is simply click open, and then let me navigate to desktop, and then open up the folder that you've just downloaded, and then go ahead and open up the pom.xml, and then as project. And there we go. So now Maven is doing its thing, and we should have a project already bootstrapped. So just give a second for indexing, and there you go. Now let's go ahead and open up Google, and let's go ahead and search for AWS and then Java SDK. So right here, so actually simply say Maven actually. So right here, let's go ahead and click on the very first link. So this is the library that we actually need. And you can see that it's the Amazon SDK for Java that provides an API for building software on AWS. And you can see right here, Amazon S3, EC2, SQS, so on and so forth. So let me actually grab that. And then what I'm going to do is expand this main folder. So AWS image upload. And inside of this folder, we have pom.xml. So this is where you define all the dependencies for your project. So inside of this dependencies section right here, after the test, so this one right here, so Spring Boot started test, let's go ahead and simply paste our dependency. So that one, and then simply say enable auto import, and this will go ahead and resolve the dependency for you. Just give you a second. And there we go. So everything has been resolved. Now we have this dependency that we can use to interact with Amazon AWS. Next, let me go ahead and show you the credentials that you need from the Amazon console so that your server can connect to Amazon. All right, so let me go ahead and open up Chrome. And what I'm going to do is simply navigate to AWS. And then if you don't have an account, go ahead and register. It doesn't cost you anything. They give you, I think it's 250 hours for free for a year so that you can experiment with some of these resources or services that Amazon does provide. And to be honest, Amazon is the leading cloud provider out there. Everyone is using it, and you should be aware of it and also know how to use it and understand how some of the services do work. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to use Amazon S3. So let me go ahead and simply sign into the console. So if you don't have an account, go ahead and create. Once you have the account, go ahead and sign into the console. So right here, you can see that I'm inside of the Amazon console. So right here you have a bunch of services that they provide, but the one that we are interested is the Amazon S3. So before we move any further, what we need to do is to grab the Amazon credentials. So go ahead and click on your account and then go to My Security Credentials. And right here, you can see that you can generate access keys. So I think I'm only able to create 2 access keys, but go ahead and pretty much generate one, and then you'll be given the, so if I go ahead and generate one, so you can see that the limit has exceeded, but go ahead and generate one and you'll be given 2 things, the access key as well as the secret. So as you can see, once you've downloaded the secret, you're not able to see it, right? So if I click on it, you can see that I can't see it. And in fact, let me go ahead and simply generate one. So the oldest one right here is this one. So I'm going to delete it. So I'm going to type delete right here. And then if I go ahead and generate access key, you can see that you get the access key ID as well as the secret. So you can see right here. So go ahead and download the file, and then I'm going to show you how to use it. So let me actually download the file and then put it inside of my desktop. There we go. And that is done. So now that we have the access key as well as the secret, let's go ahead and write some Java code that will take those and gives us an instance of the Amazon S3 client so that we can interact with buckets. All right, let's open up IntelliJ. And inside of IntelliJ, let me actually close this POM XML because we don't need it. And go ahead and inside of src, so source, main, and then Java. And you can see right here that we have this class. So if I open it up, this is the main class that starts the Spring Boot application. So what we're going to do right here is simply create a package. So inside of the main folder, let's go ahead and create a package. And right here, simply call it config. And by the way, if you want to learn about IntelliJ, I've got a full course on YouTube for free about IntelliJ. Next, let me go ahead and simply name this as Amazon and then config, and then enter, and there we go. Now I'm going to annotate this class with @ and then configuration. There we go. So that Spring instantiates this and anything that I have inside here. Next, let's go ahead and simply say public and then Amazon and then S3. So this comes from the dependency that we've added inside of our pom.xml. So enter, and then right here simply say S3. And then inside, what we're going to do is simply say AWS and then credentials, and then simply say AWS credentials equals to, and then basic, or actually new, and then basic AWS credentials. There we go. And you can see that we have to pass D. So if I press Command P, and you can also see the keyboard shortcuts down below, we have to pass the access key and the secret key. So let me actually go ahead and put empty strings for now. And if I open up the CSV, so what I'm going to do is use terminal, and I'm going to say cat and then desktop and then / access keys.csv, or you can open this file using the IDE. So basically I want to get the contents. So enter. You can see that the access key is this one. So I'm going to go back to IntelliJ and then put it in. And then for the secret, let me grab this and then paste it. And there we go. So now we have the credentials. Now what we need to do is simply say return. So we're going to return and then Amazon S3 and then client builder and then dot standard. So this is using the builder pattern. So let me put this on a new line and then that on a new line as well. And then dot with and then credentials. And we want to pass the credentials. So new AWS and then static and then credentials provider, and inside pass the credentials just like that, and then simply say dot and then build. There we go. Now we have this class that will give us the S3 client right here, so we can use it. Now obviously this is missing an annotation, and that is @ and then bean, so that Spring instantiates this class right here, so an instance of Amazon S3 with these configurations, so that we can inject in other classes. Next, let's go ahead and create the bucket that we will be storing and retrieving images from. All right, go back to the Amazon console and go back to S3. So click on services, S3. So you can search for S3, or you can see in the history, or you can pin. So you can pin S3 right here. So whatever is easy for you. So I'm going to click on S3. And then you can see that I already have a couple of buckets right here, right? So I've got one for my website and another one for Elastic Beanstalk. So I was doing some experiments, and also you can see this one, testing image 1, 2, 3. Now let's go ahead and create a new bucket, and the bucket name, let's go ahead and simply say amigos and then code dash and then image dash upload and then dash 1, 2, 3. So this is the name of the bucket, and then obviously you can specify the actual region. So for me, let me go ahead and simply say Ireland. So Ireland, there we go. And you can copy settings from existing buckets, but I'm going to leave it as is and simply create. And there we go. So now we do have this bucket right here called Amigos Code Image Upload 123. So the bucket names, they must be unique. So if you have a bucket name called Amigos Code Images Upload 123, it won't work. So it has to be a unique bucket, right? So go ahead and pretty much just use your company name or your name, or generate a very random bucket name for your own use. So what I'm going to do is simply grab this name. So this is the name of the bucket. So actually, let me click on it, and then I can grab the bucket name from here. So I just copy that, and currently you can see that the bucket is empty. So what we're going to do is go back to IntelliJ, and let's go ahead and create a new package. So let's go ahead and simply create a new package, and right here simply call it buckets. And then inside of this bucket, let's go ahead and create a new class, and this will be an enum. So we're going to pick enum from this drop down, and then right here simply say bucket and then name, and then press enter. And what we're going to do is simply define an enum called profile and then image. So this will be an enum that we can use through our code base that will have the following value. So Amigos Code Image Upload 123. Now, obviously that needs some work. So let's go ahead and simply say private and then final and then string and then bucket and then name. And I'm missing a semicolon there. And what we need to do is simply create a constructor for this, just like that, refactor, and then refactor, and there we go. So now we have this enum that takes a bucket name, and then we can use only this enum to get this specific value. So let's go ahead and generate the actual getter. There we go. And we are done with this class. Next, let's go ahead and pretty much create our service that will store images to this specific bucket. All right, so I just want to mention that you saw that we created the S3 bucket via the Amazon console. We could have created a bucket within our Java application, right? So usually that's not the best practice when it comes to create like infrastructure, right? Because a bucket is a piece of infrastructure. So you either create it manually, or better, you might use something like CloudFormation or Terraform. So just to let you know that, there are other options in the way that you can create buckets, but if you want to create buckets through code, I would not recommend it. If you have any questions, go ahead and message me. Otherwise, let's move on. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new package. So inside of this package, let's simply go ahead and name it as file and then store. And then enter. And now inside of this package, let's go ahead and create a class called file and then store, just like that. Enter. And now we have this class that will use this this class right here that we told Spring Boot to make it available for us to inject and then store images. So basically we can store not only images, but you can store anything that you want, really, right? A file, zips, pretty much anything that you can think of. So now let me simply go ahead and open up the file store class. Let me go ahead and annotate this with @ and then service. And what we're going to do is I'm going to say private and then final Amazon S3, simply name it as S3, and then add to constructor And right here, we're going to auto wire. So this is using dependency injection. And again, if you want to learn more about this, go ahead and check my YouTube channel where I've got plenty of videos on dependency injection as well as Spring Boot. Now let's go ahead and pretty much implement our very first method. So we will implement the save method and then the download method later on. So what we're going to do here is simply create a method, so public and then void, so we're not going to return anything, and simply say save. Now what we need to specify right here are a couple of things. So one, we need the path. So the path will be the bucket name plus any subfolders that you may or may not have. So let me go ahead and say path, and then we're going to have the file name, so string and then file and then name. And let's also have an optional, and this will be an optional. So actually, let me put this on a new line so you can see exactly everything. So right here will be an optional of a map. So a map of strings and then string right here. And basically this will serve as the metadata that we can pass to store images or files, right? So you can include the content type, the content length, so on and so forth. So let me simply say optional and then metadata. There we go. And then comma, and then we're going to pass the actual input and then streams. So this is what gets saved to Amazon S3 bucket. So I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to get this from our client. But for now, let's go ahead and simply say try. And then inside of this try block, what we want is to say S3 and then dot. And then you can see that we have a couple of methods, but the one that I really want is the put method. So right here, I'm going to pass the path, the file name, and then the input stream, and then the metadata, right? So meta and then data. So what I'm going to do actually is let's go ahead and create this metadata. So let me go ahead and simply say object metadata, and then object metadata equals to, and then new object metadata. And now right here, I'm going to say optional dot, and then if present, so we'll have the actual map. So inside of this map, I'm going to say if, and then map dot is empty. And I'm actually going to flip it. So I'm going to flip it just like this. So if it's not empty, what I'm going to do is simply say map dot, and then for each, I'm going to say object metadata column, and then add user metadata, taking the key as well as the value. So if you want to find out exactly how this is being used, so it's like that, right? So you can see that for each takes the key and the value, and then I'm saying add actually object metadata, add metadata. So inside of this object right here, there is a method called add user metadata, passing the key and value from this map right here, right? Which is this one if is present, but we can use method reference. So just like that, and it looks much neater. And there we go. And in fact, this actually, let me rename this to metadata. So just like that, and then just like that, and you can see that this error now went away. Now if we are successful, so if we are successful with this operation right here, which might throw an exception, we simply store the file. Otherwise, we're going to catch, let's go ahead and catch the Amazon and then service exception right here, and then simply say E, and then for now I'm simply going to throw new and then illegal state exception, and then I'm going to say failed to store store content to store file to S3, and then comma, and then pass the actual exception, right? And there we go. So now we have this method that saves files to Amazon S3. Now let's go ahead and actually build this application incrementally, i.e. let's go ahead now and define the actual model and then the actual API, and then let's build the front end and upload a image and see that it works, and then we can improve the application progressively. All right, let's go ahead and define the actual model for this application. So if I go back to the actual diagram, so right here, so basically we want to upload images for, let's say, profile users, right? So a profile user coming from our React front end can upload an image, right? So we can upload an image for a profile user. So let's go ahead and define the profile user class or model. So inside of the main package, so let's go ahead and create yet another package, and let's call this package as profile. And let's create now a new class, and we're going to name this class as profile and then user, or user profile. I think it sounds better. So user and then profile. Now this user will have a few things. So one, we will have an ID for this profile user, so private and then UID, and then this will be let's actually say profile, or actually user and then profile ID. And then let's go ahead and simply have a username, so private and then string and then user name. And finally, because we need to store the actual image, let's go ahead and simply say string and then profile and then image and then key. So this will be the actual, well, actually not key, but let's simply say profile or user profile and then image and then link. And let me simply add a comment saying that this will be the S3 and then link, or actually key, right? So now let's go ahead and generate a constructor just like that. And let me put this on a new line so you can see everything. Let's also generate some getters and setters, or actually just like that. Oops. So getters and setters just like that. And finally we will need the equals and hash code. So let's go ahead and simply say equals and hash code, and right here go ahead and pretty much just select the default there, and then simply say next, next, and then select all non-members just like that, and then finish. So right here I'm going to change something, right? So right here, instead of saying user profile ID dot equals, because this might be null, and if it's null it will blow. So what I want to do here is, instead of say equals, I'm going to say objects dot and then equals. So right here, so I'm going to show exactly what this means in a second. And I don't want this, so no, and then don't ask again. So let me actually remove that, and then this will be a comma there, and let me grab this and then paste it there, and then right here simply add the opening of parentheses, and then remove that equals there, or actually that parenthesis, and then the same here. So user profile just like that, remove the equals and the parentheses and then comma. So basically, so if I save this and then indent things, so if I open up this object of equals, you can see that it's saying whether a equals to b, right, or a not equals to null and a dot equals B. So basically right here we have our null check, which will make things much better. So I think you can use Guava, and Guava does all of this, but because we've used the defaults when generated the actual equals from Java 7, this is what we get. So there we go. Now that we have our model called user profile, let's go ahead and create a fake database where we're going to return some fake users to our clients. All right, so let's go ahead and pretty much just have another package, and right here simply say data and then store. And let's go ahead and simply create a new class and simply say fake and then user profile data and then store, and then press enter, and there we go. Now let's go ahead and simply annotate this with @ and then repository, and let's go ahead and simply have a private and then static final and then list. So this will return a list of user and then profile, and let me simply say user profiles equals to and then new and then array list, just like that. And then inside of a static block, let's simply add some user profiles. So user profiles dot and then add new and then user profile. And then right here, let's simply go ahead and simply say uid dot random uid, and then for the username, let's simply say Janet and then Jones. And then what we need, so Command P, and then we need the actual link. So the link, I'm going to say null right there. And let's add another one. And in fact, let me put this full screen so you can see. So I'm going to duplicate this. And then right here, let's simply say Antonio and then Junior, just like that. And then also for now, let's keep the user profile image link null. And there we go. So one change I want to make, so because this user profile image link can be null, let's go ahead and open up the profile or actually user profile model. And right here, so when we return the so right here, so where we get the user profile link, let's make this an optional. And then what we're going to do is simply return optional dot of nullable, just like that. So anyone looking at this method or calling this method knows that this might be null, and then they can use optionals and streams to code against it, which is really cool. So there we go. Now that we have this data store, let's go ahead and pretty much have a method. So let's go ahead and simply say public and then a list and then user and then profiles and then get and then user profiles. There we go. And now let's simply return and then user and then profiles. There we go. And we are good to go. So now that we have this fake user profile, let's go ahead and create the API that will return this list right here. So if I go to the diagram again, so we're going to build this part right here. So currently we've been touching a lot on the service side right here, but let's go ahead and define this API for now. So but next, let's go ahead and create a method that the client can hit, and then they get the list of user profiles in our database. And if I expand this, so inside of this package right here, so profile, let's go ahead and create a class and simply name it as profile. and then controller, or actually user profile and then controller, and then enter. And there we go. So now let's go ahead and simply annotate this with at and then rest and then controller and then controller. And then let's go ahead and also define the at and then request and then mapping. And right here, let's simply go ahead and say API and then v1 and then user dash profile. And then inside, let's go ahead and define a method. So let's go ahead and say that we want to have a method that will return a list of users. So public and then list, and this will be user profile, and simply say get and then user and then profiles. There we go. And for now, let's simply return and then no for now. So now let's go ahead and simply say this will be at and then get mapping, and that's it. Now let's go ahead and define a service class. So user profile and then service. And let's also define the class that interacts with the database. So let's go ahead and simply say user profile data access and then service. So the job of this class will be also at and then repository. So this will be a repository. Now inside right here, let's use some dependency injection. So I'm going to say private and then final fake and then user profile data store. And let's add this to constructor and then auto wire. There we go. And if I remove that line, now let me go ahead and simply say this will return a list and then of user and then profile. There we go. And then let me simply say get and then user profiles. And guess what? We're going to return the fake, or actually fake user profile data store dot and then get user profiles. So the reason why I'm doing this is because you can use then dependency injection to change this class right here, right? So if you implement to an interface, and I explain this on my videos a lot, how to implement to an interface and then how you can switch implementation. So that's why I'm actually injecting this class right here, so that then you can use dependency injection to change implementations. Right now we are using a fake data store or a fake database, but if you want to use, for example, MySQL or Postgres, you can pretty much change just one line of, change one line of code, and then you switch to a real database. So if you want to learn more about that, go ahead and check my videos where I teach all of that. So now that we have this user profile data access service, let's go ahead and open up the user profile service. So this is where all the business logic really happens. So for us, we simply have one method, and really there's no business logic at the moment. So user and then profile data access service. And again, let me inject this. So at and then auto wired, and this will be at and then service. So right here again, let me simply say this will be a list, or in fact, let me grab the exact same thing here and then paste it here, and then this will be user profile data access service. And there we go. So now it means that I can take this user profile service, go back to user profile controller, and then simply say private, and then actually this should be final. And then right here, let me simply inject and then at and then auto wire. So now you can see how things are connected. So get and then user profiles. Now let's go ahead and pretty much just fire up the application and see if we get an API up and running. So let me go ahead and open up the AWS image upload application, and in fact I'm going to rename this to main. Of course I want to rename that, and then open up main, and then simply run this main class. And there we go. So if I show you the logs, you can see that right here, Tomcat initialized with ports 8080. Now if I collapse this and open up user profile controller, now take this path right here and then go ahead and simply open up your web browser, simply say localhost and then 8080 / and then paste API v1 user profile, enter, and voila, you can see that we have 2 users in our database. So this is coming from our fake database, but you get the idea. So if you were to implement to a real database, it would be the exact same thing. So you can see that we have Janet Jones here and Antonio Jr. So this is all for this part. Next, let's go ahead and implement the upload endpoint. So this one right here. So when the client sends us a file for a particular user, we then want to update. So we want to update this link right here with the correct image profile link. All right, let's go ahead and implement the image upload endpoint. So let me collapse this, and inside of the user profile controller, let's go ahead and define a new method right here. So let's go ahead and simply say public, and then this will be void. And right here, what we're going to do, and then let's name this as upload, and then user profile, and then image. And let me add some curly brackets there. And what we're going to take from the client are 2 things. One, we want to take the path variable, so at and then path variable, and this will be the actual user profile and then ID, and this will be a UID, and then let me actually name this as user profile and then ID, just like that. And let me expand this. So now we have the actual user profile ID coming from the actual path. So this will allow us to assign an image to this profile ID or to this user. And the final thing that we need is the actual file. So for this, go ahead and simply say at and then request and then param. So this will come as request param, and let's simply name this as file. And you'll see how we're going to set this from the front end, and simply say multi and then part and then file, just like that, and then simply say file. Now let me go ahead and simply indent things properly, and there we go. Now what we need to do here is very simple. Let's simply call our user profile service, and then let's simply say dot and then upload, or in fact let's take the exact same name and then simply pass the user profile ID and then the file, just like that. And then let me go ahead and create this method and just leave it as it is, and there we go. So let me go back to this controller because we haven't finished. So the next thing that I need is to say that this will be at and then post mapping, and then inside of this post mapping I need to say that I'm going to consume, so consumes, and then this is equal to media type multi-part form data and then value. And then I'm going to say that I'm going to produce and then media type dot application and then JSON value, and then right here let's simply finally define the actual path. So, or in fact, let's define the path up above right here and remove this comma. So path, or actually path, not params, so path equals to, and then this will be, so this will be this user profile ID, and then add this comma right here, and then let's simply say / and then image, and then / and then download. So there we go. So this will be then as follows. So the path for this will be we're going to take this ID right here and then simply say / the actual ID, and then / image / and then upload. But you're going to see how we're going to define this in a second when we implement the React application. And there we go. So now this API will be able to take the profile ID as well as the file and then use this user profile service to upload images. So currently this is empty, but we're going to implement it next. Alright, so right now I'm not going to implement the entire logic inside of this method called uploadUserProfileImage, but I'm going to leave some comments on what we need to do when we get to this point. So one, we have to check, so one, check if image is not empty, and then second, we want to check if, oh actually I've got a typo, so empty. Then I want to check if file is an image. I then want to check whether, so I'm just thinking out loud right here, so I then want to check whether the user exists in our database, and then if so, grab some metadata from, and then file if any, and it should be with B. And then finally what we need to do is simply, so 5, so this will be store the image in S3, and let's simply say and update database with S3 and then image and then link, right? So we want to update, so database, so basically we want to update, so let me show you. So we want to update this user profile image link, and in fact let me simply say update database, and then just like that, right? So we want to update this. So for now, what I want to do really is nothing. I'm not going to implement anything because I want to show you exactly how we are going to get to this point right here where we have the file. So now let's switch to frontend, where I'm going to show you how to set up the React application and then how we're going to send a file from the front end. And then I'm going to show you how to add a breakpoint so you can see exactly the file at this point. So once we have the file, we can implement all of this logic. So for now, let's switch to JavaScript and React. All right, let's go ahead and bootstrap the React frontend for our application. So let me quickly go to the diagram. And basically, let's go ahead and implement this part right here, right? So where the client will be written in React, and then we will issue GET and POST request to our API. So go ahead and open up Google and search for Create React App. And right here in this very first link, so by Facebook, Create React App. So this allows you to bootstrap your React application. So if I scroll down, you can see that you simply have to say npx create react app and then give it a name, and then you say cd into that, so you change directory, and then simply npm start, and then you'll get this app right here. So I think they have a screenshot. No, they don't, but I'm going to show you exactly how this works. So go ahead and make sure that you have Node installed. So if I open up Chrome and then simply say Node, and make sure that you have Node installed in order to have npm as well as npx. So what I'm going to do is go back to IntelliJ, and right here you can use the terminal right within IntelliJ. So let me click on it, and if you want, you can also use your own terminal. So right here, so just use whatever you want, but I'm showing you other options to use terminal. So IntelliJ is really powerful. So right here, so what I'm going to do is if I do an ls and then -al, you can see that this is the current folder structure. And in fact, if I expand the project tab, so right here, so whatever you see here, you can see that is the exact same thing. So right here, you can see that we have source. So source is right here. We have the pom.xml, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is simply say cd, so change directory into src. And then within that, we also have main. So I'm going to press enter, and there we go. Now within main, so this is where I'm going to run this command. So if I go back to Facebook Create React App, so right here, I'm going to issue this command right here. So let me copy that and then go back to IntelliJ, paste that in, and then right here, I'm going to change this to front and then end, just like that, and then press enter. And you can see that this is now going off and, downloading everything and bootstrapping a React app that we can run within seconds. So just give it a second. It's downloading all the Node dependencies, and there we go. So you can see now we have this message saying happy hacking, and we have a bunch of commands right here. So we have how to start. So we need to cd into frontend and then simply type npm start. And you can see right here we have npm run build, tests, and then eject. And also you can see that we have our front end right here. So this is awesome. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to clear the screen and then cd into front end. There we go. And now I'm going to type npm and then start. And there you go. So you can see now that we have this React application. And basically, this is what the Bootstrap does. So now that we have this Bootstrap application, let's go ahead and change it to according our needs, and also perform a GET request to our backend to pull this information right here. So we're going to hit this endpoint, localhost API version 1, and then user profile, and we should get this array right here. You can use IntelliJ Ultimate Edition for web development, but because I'm using the community, it doesn't have support for JavaScript. So I'm actually using this one because I know most of you will be using the community edition. However, if you are using the Ultimate, you can use Ultimate Edition for JavaScript. Even though I think that this IDE, VS Code, is the best IDE out there for web development. So go ahead and download it to follow along without no issues, and I highly recommend it. So let me go ahead and open up VS Code, and what I'm going to do is pretty much just open. So I'm going to open inside of the desktop. I'm going to open the app and then navigate to source, main, and then open the frontend folder. So I'm going to open, and there we go. So now you can see that I've got the bootstrapped application. And in fact, if I go ahead and pretty much just open up src and then app.js, and right here, let me simply say hello and then React, and then save this, go back to the web browser. You should see that this reflects immediately. So learn React and then hello React. Let's go ahead and make some changes to this web app according to our needs. So what I'm going to do here is pretty much remove everything. So actually I'm going to remove everything right here. So I really don't need everything here. So I'm going to remove everything within the header. So I'm going to delete that. There we go. And if I save this, go back to the web browser, and you can see that now this has nothing. So we are good to go. So the files here, they're very self-explanatory, and if you want to learn more about React, I've got some videos on React, and just follow along and it will be super easy. So what we need to do here is first, let's go ahead and download a dependency called Axios. So Axios allows us to perform HTTP requests to backends. So right here, so what I'm going to do is go to IntelliJ, and what I'm going to do is actually cancel this, and for now I'm going to keep away from IntelliJ. So I'm going to cancel that, and then if I collapse this, if I go to my web browser, refresh, you should see that the site can't be reached. So what I'm going to do is within my terminal, so I'm going to use my terminal, I'm going to cd into desktop. Inside I've got the AWS image upload project, and then src, main, and then frontend. There we go. So now I'm going to say npm and then start. And we should get the exact same thing. There we go. So now let me actually cancel and then simply say npm dash and then capital S I for install, and then simply install Axios. Press enter, and there we go. So you can see this was really fast. And if I go ahead and pretty much just say cat and then package.json, or actually JSON, you should see that we have the Axios right here, right? So in fact, just let me show you from within VS Code. So inside of package.json, you can see that we have the Axios right here. So this is a library that we've just downloaded. Now let's go ahead and start the server. So npm start, or actually, oops, start. And let me go back to VS Code and open up the app.js. And right here, let me go ahead and pretty much go ahead and say import and then Axios from, and then Axios. And from React, what I'm going to import are two things. So I'm going to import the use and then state from React, and then use and then effect, just like that. So I'm going to be using some hooks, and hooks is a new way of creating functional components, and I've been experimenting with it. I don't know a great deal about it, but it seems really awesome, and it makes your code look much cleaner. So now let me go ahead and right here, so what I'm going to do is simply create a new function. So I'm going to say const, and then I'm going to call this as user, capital S, and then profiles, just like that. And this will be an arrow function. And what we're going to do here is actually I need an equal there, so equal, and right here I'm going to say const and then get, or actually fetch, and then user and then profiles, and then this will pretty much just invoke Axios. So I'm going to say Axios dot, and then we have a get function, and within this get we have to pass the URL. So remember correctly, the URL was this one, right? So localhost 8080. Let me copy that and then paste it in, and then what we need is simply dot and then. So this returns a promise, and then inside we have the response. So what we're going to do for now, let me simply say console.log and then res. So I want to log the res, so the response, so you see exactly what is inside, and then end that with semicolon. So now after this, what I'm going to do is simply say use and then effect, and then inside of this I'm going to pass this function right here, and I'm going to simply say get and then users. So actually not get users, but fetch user profiles. So basically this is similar to component did mount if you ever done any kind of React. I'm going to invoke that, and then just like that. Now what I'm going to do here is also pass an empty array, and this pretty much says if there is anything that changes inside of this list, this use effect will be triggered again. In our case, we haven't got anything just yet, but just add it, and it's good to know why it's here. And I've also noticed that I've removed the equal from here, so just let me add it back, save that, and everything is good to go. Now inside of this div right here, simply go ahead and say user and then profiles. And this is the actual component that we've just created, right? So this is a functional component. Now what I'm going to do is simply save this, and then let me go back to Chrome and open up the application. So right here, and you can see that we are missing a statement. So let me actually say that I need to return. So basically, let me simply return an H1 for now. So hello. And then go back, and you can see that we have hello right here. But now if I inspect the console, so I'm interested in the console, and then go to console, and right here you can see that we have a connection refused, and that's because the backend is not up and running. So let me simply start the backend. There we go, up and running. Let me go back and now refresh. And there we go. So you can see now we have a different error. So access to this URL from origin was blocked by CORS. So this means that when you have an application which is trying to communicate to your backend on a different host, you get this CORS error. So this is to prevent from malicious attacks where you have different hosts accessing your backend. So let's go ahead for now and ignore this. So let's go ahead and open up the backend. So inside IntelliJ, go ahead and open up D. So if I click here, so go ahead and open up user profile controller, and at the very top, so let me put this full screen, go ahead and simply say at and then cross and then origin, and then right here we're going to say that we will accept from anywhere. So you shouldn't really do this. So in production, or if you are deploying this, you should be really know exactly what to allow to your endpoints. But for now, because we are testing things locally, I'm going to enable this to localhost 8080. I could even say localhost 80 or actually 3000, but you might have different front-end applications locally running in different ports. So by saying star, you simply enable everything. Now let me go ahead and restart this. So I'm going to say stop and rerun. There we go. Now if I go ahead to my front end and then refresh, you can see that now we get this status code of 200, and we have the data array. So inside you can see that we have the data and it contains our two users. So there we go. So we've managed to connect to our backend. Next, let's go ahead and pull some of this information right here into our application, and then we will add the capability to upload files. All right, so let's go ahead and take this data array right here and shovel into our screen. So currently it says hello, but eventually we want to have all the names right here. So what I'm going to do is go back to VS Code, and right here, so where we fetch the users, so right here you can see that we go to our backend and then we console.log the response. But remember, right here the response contains the data property. So inside, what I'm going to do is simply say const and then user, or actually let me simply say data equals to res dot and then data, just like that. So now that we have the data, what we need to do is to set the state. So let's go ahead and before this fetch state, let's go ahead and simply say const, and then right here simply add curly brackets and then user profiles, and then simply say set user profiles, and this will come from equals to use and then state, and the initial state will be an empty array. So what we're going to do now here is simply say set and then user profiles and then pass data. And in fact, let's simply say res dot and then data, just like that, and delete that. So now if I save this, you should be setting the state right here. Now that we have the state, we can simply map it into whatever we want. So right here where we return the h1, so right here instead of return hello, what I'm going to do is simply say user profiles. So this user profiles is this one, which is set by this function, and then dot and then map, and inside of that we have the actual user, and then actually let me say user profile, and then we also have the index right here. And what I'm going to do is simply add an our function, and inside right here for now let's simply say return, and then we're going to return a div, and inside of, oh actually let me add parentheses because I think it looks cleaner, just like that, and then just like that, and then end there as well, and just like that. And then inside, what I'm going to do is simply add an h1, so right here. So right here, let me simply add the actual user profile. So user profile dot and then user pro and then file and then ID. So we get the ID, or actually let's go ahead and simply say username, and then let's have a p tag for the ID. So user and then profile dot user profile ID, just like that. So now if I go ahead and pretty much just add the actually, so let me add the key right here. So because they have to be unique, this will be the actual index. So if I save this and then go back to Chrome, and right here you can see that we have Janet Jones as well as the actual ID, right? And this should be it. So you can see that now we are rendering the information coming from our backend. So also you can see that, so right here, so if I open up the data, so we have the image profile link, but I'm not going to add that because this will be a real image in a second. Next, let's go ahead and use Dropzone, which is a library that allows us to send files to our server. All right, so navigate to React Dropzone on GitHub, and I'm going to leave a link for this repo so you can follow along. But basically, this repo allows us to drop files. So you can see right here, it's very slick. So the installation is very straightforward. You simply say npm install -save React Dropzone, and then the usage you can see right here, which simply have this functional component, and then we are ready to go. So let's go ahead and install this package. So I'm going to grab that and then open up the terminal. I'm going to cancel out of this, paste that, npm install -save React Dropzone, enter. Just give you a second. And there you go. So now we have the library installed. So let me simply say npm and then start, and voila. So you can see that everything is working fine. Now for each user, so for each user profile, let's go ahead and add the drop zone where we can upload an image for that specific user. So what we're going to do right here is very straightforward. So let me go ahead and open up VS Code, and actually let me go back and steal some code. So right here, I'm going to grab this and then go back to VS Code, and let me paste it here. And we also have to import this. So let me go at the very top, paste that in, and we also have to use the use and then callback. So right here, use callback, and it's that simple. So now what I want to do is for each user, so when we loop, what I'm going to do is simply use the drop, or actually my drop zone. So in fact, let's go ahead and simply say drop zone. There we go. And then if I save this, and now if I open up my browser right here, you can see that we have drag and drop some files here. So what I'm going to do for now is, you see right here inside of this on drop, so we are using a callback. So what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to say const and then file equals to accepted files, and then I'm going to grab the first file, and right here I'm going to simply say console dot and then log and then file, and then save this. And now what I'm going to do is pretty much just drop a file and see what we get. So right here, let me simply close this. Oh, actually I need this so you can see exactly the logs. So let me expand it even further, just like that. Now if I drop this access keys.csv, so watch this. So I'm going to take this, and then you see that this will change. So you can see that as I put the file there, oh, actually it will happen so quickly. So basically right here, you can see that we are logging right here. So this is the file. So actually let me do it again. So let me clear this, and then let me actually grab the file, and you can see that the text changes. So drop the files here, and if I do the same for the other one, you can see that it's changing. So let me actually drop it here, and you can see that we get full information about the file. So if I make this bigger, so you can see right here, so this is a file, and we get a bunch of information about it. So the last modified, the name, the path, the size, the type, so it's text CSV, and you know, this is the actual file that we can now send to our server, which is pretty cool. So now let me go ahead and simply make some changes. So in fact, I'm going to grab this drop zone and put it here. And then what I'm going to do right here is simply add a breakpoint at the very end. So right here, simply add this BR. So we have some space. And also at the very top, let's add two of those. So BR, just like that. And then another one, just like that. So basically we will have the profile image right here. So to do, and then profile, and then image. So let me simply save this and then go back to Chrome. And you can see that this is looking much better. Also, let me go ahead and add some CSS styling. So right here, open up the index.scss, and then for the background, so go ahead and simply say back and then ground. So, oh, actually background and then dash color. So let's pick a color. So in fact, let me use this color picker right here. Save this. Now, if I open up my front end, and you can see that it's looking much nicer. And also you can see that we have drag and drop some files here. Let's change that text as well. So this will be drag and drop. So right here, profile and then image, or click to select profile and then image, just like that. And then right here, so drop the image, and then here, just like that. Save, go back, and you can see drop the image here. So obviously this is not an image, but next let's go ahead and download some images that we can use. Alright, so navigate to pexels.com, and right here you can download free images. So let me go ahead and search for a boy. So right here, and let's get this guy right here. So I kind of like this picture, so I'm gonna download it. So free download into my desktop. So let me simply say this will be what was the name? So this was, so if I cancel this, so this was Antonio Jr. So let me grab that, and where did the image go? So if I download again, so that will be Antonio Jr. So if I now save this, there we go, and then we have Janet Jones. So let's actually search for a girl. So let me simply say girl, and then let's actually say that this is Janet Jones. So free download, and then paste that in, and then save. There we go. And we have two images. So if I pretty much now close this, and I'm going to leave a link to Pexels so you can follow along as well. So now, so you can see that we have two images right here, and I can take this. So let me actually open the console and expand that like that, console, and right here. So if I take Antonio Jr. and then drop it, you can see right here, I can drop it. Oops, that didn't work. So if I take it again, drop it there, you can see that now we have the file. So right here, you can see that the name is AntonioJr.jpg, the size, the type, image JPEG. And basically now we are ready to take the file and send it to our server. The same with Janet Jones. So if I take this file, put it here, drop it, you can see that we have Janet Jones information, or actually the file, or actually the image for Janet Jones. So right here, you can see all the information. And also you can click here and pretty much just grab the file. So I'm just showing drag and drop because it's cool, but you have both options. So next, let's go ahead and implement the functionality that will take these files and then upload them to our server. Alright, so let's take these images and implement the functionality to upload them to our server, which then, so if I open up the diagram again, so right here, so we will upload the images, and then it will land on our API service, or actually layer, and then it will pass through the service, and then the service will store them in the S3 bucket as well as the database. So we will update the actual profile image link inside of our database. So remember, so before we did have this API right here, so this method right here called uploadUserProfileImage. And just to mention that I had a so this shouldn't be download, it should be upload, and I've mentioned that previously. So this should be up and then load because we are uploading images, but we also will have the download method. So right here you can see that we have to pass the user profile ID and then / image and then upload right here, and then the actual file, right? So we have everything that we need to pass it to our server. So let's go ahead and open up VS Code, and right here, so what we're going to do is, so you see that we have the actual file, right? So what I'm going to do here is simply create a form data. So this is what we need to send the actual file as a so right here as a multi-part file. So right here I'm going to say const and then form and then data equals to and then new and then form data. So now let me add parentheses and then end that. Now what I'm going to do is simply say form data and then dot append, and then right here I'm going to append the actual file and then pass the file. So right here, so this name file has to be the same as this one. So this will be available to us through request param. So this is very important. Now let me go back, and now that we have the file appended to this form data, let's go ahead and use Axios. So let me actually add some spaces so you can see exactly what's happening. So let me use Axios. So I'm going to say Axios and then dot and then post, and then guess what? So remember, so that will be localhost and then the actual API v1 user profile and then profile ID, image, and then upload. So let's actually grab the URL from here. So this will be the same thing, and then go here, and then let me actually append here. And what we need now is to pass the actual profile ID. So let me use backticks here, and right here I'm going to say / and then I'm going to use $, and I'm going to pass the profile, or actually user profile, and then ID, and we're going to define this in a second, / and then image / oops, I almost made the same mistake. So upload and not download, upload. There you go. So right here, so image upload is this one right here, right? And you can see that we will pass the user profile in a second. So now how do we get the user profile ID? So this is very simple. So we will get it from props. So right here, I'm going to say user profile ID. And then when we define this component, we can simply pass the user profile ID. So what I'm going to do here is simply destructure everything. So I'm going to pass everything because I know there is a field called user profile ID. So I'm going to say right here, so dot, and then user and then profile. So this is the same as if I was to do this. So let me actually say user profile ID equals to, and then user, or actually user profile dot user profile ID, right? So this is too much. I'm just going to do that. And now we have access to the user profile ID. Now let's actually finish up this post method. So inside of Axios, what we need to do now is actually pass d, so comma, and then form and then data. And we also have to pass some headers. So this will be in the form of an object, and then inside have headers, and then we will have the following. So I'm going to have the content and then dash and then type. And remember, what does the server accepts? So remember, so the server accepts a multi-part data value. So let's actually go ahead and simply say multi and then part / and then form dash and then data. And there we go. This should be everything that we need to send files to our server. Now, obviously, we can pass the dot and then, right? So .then, and for now, let's simply say console.log, and then let's simply say file uploaded successfully, and then let's have the catch, and then error. So that's the error. And for now, let's simply console.log the actual error. So .log and then error. Oops, just like that, and then end that with semicolon. And I think we are done. So next, let's go ahead and test this entire logic and see if it works. All right, let's go ahead and test things out. So first, let's make sure that the front end is up and running with no errors. So if I inspect, you can see that there is no errors. This is just a warning. And if I close this, so let's go ahead and open up the backend and go ahead and stop the backend. So I'm going to stop it. And what I'm going to do is put a breakpoint right here. So put a breakpoint right here and then debug. So let's debug this. So basically when the client hits this endpoint right here, so this endpoint, the actual call will stop here, and then we can inspect the values. So now let me go back to the web app and let me go ahead and simply drop a file. So what I'm going to do is simply grab Antonio Jr. profile picture and then simply drop it right here, and then this should work. And oops, we have an error. So always expected, right? So it never works first time. So let me go to console, and you can see that we have a 500. So we actually tried to upload the file, but the server responded with 500. So let's actually inspect the server. And right here, you can see that we have a bunch of errors. And let me actually show you what the error is. So right here, you can see that the field file exceeds its maximum permitted size. So basically, it means that the file is too big. So what we're going to do is actually override the defaults. So open up the project tab, and inside of resources folder application.properties, let's go ahead and simply say spring.servlet.multi part dash and then dot and then max dash file dash size equals 2, and then let's actually be generous, so 50 MB. Now let me actually go ahead and debug again. So there we go. Let's actually try the exact same thing. So let's actually close this, and then if I try and upload the file again, you can see that this time it works. So the file was accepted by our server, and you can see that it hit the actual breakpoint. So if I put this full screen, you can see that we've hit the breakpoint. So right here we have this inspect tool. So right here we can inspect the contents of all the fields, all the objects, so on and so forth. So you can see that we have the profile ID, user profile ID. It's this one right here, but we also have the actual file. So if I open up the file, you can see that we have the file name, so Antonio Jr., and then we have the actual part. So this is some information about the file, and you can see right here the field name, the content type is form field, the size, headers, so on and so forth, which means that the actual upload from client to server is working, which is amazing. So now let me actually collapse this and then navigate inside of this service, And right here, remember that we have to implement all of this logic. So now that we have the actual file in our server, we can implement it. So next, let's go ahead and implement this method right here. Alright, so before I actually implement this, I thought that it would be a really great idea if you try and implement all of these steps by yourself. So spend about 10 to 20 minutes and implement all of these steps right here. So you have everything that you need in order to save the actual file coming from the web app. So right here, so if I actually go back, I still have the breakpoint. So you can see right here, we have this file right here, right? So we have the file in our backend coming from the front end. So right here. And what we want to do is actually store it inside of the S3 bucket name called Amigos Code Image Upload 123. Obviously, the bucket name will be different for you, but try and implement all of this logic right here. So give it a go. And what I'm going to do actually is pretty much just remove this breakpoint and open up debug and then continue. And there we go. So give it a go, implement all of these steps, and I'm going to implement these steps with you next. All right, let's go ahead and implement all of these steps together. Now, if you had a go, I'm going to guarantee you that my implementation will be different than yours because, you know, we have different ways of implementing things and different ways of thinking. So if you achieved the same solution, but in a different way, that is absolutely fine. So the first one, so to check whether the image is empty, I'm going to say if, and then file dot is empty. So this is very straightforward. So if the file is empty, I'm going to throw new illegal state exception. So right here, you could actually have your custom exceptions, but I want to keep it that simple and throw illegal state exceptions. Also, if you want to learn more about exceptions, check out my video on exceptions, which I'm going to leave a link down in the description of this video. So right here, I'm going to say cannot, and then upload empty, and then file. And then I'm going to actually add the actual size. So right here, plus, and then file dot, and then we should have the actual size. So right here, and then plus, and then end that. There we go. So this is the first implementation. Now to check whether the actual file is an image, I'm going to say if, and then arrays dot, and then as list, and then I'm going to pass a few things. So let me simply say contains, and then right here I'm going to say file dot, and then get, and then content type. So right here, so what I'm going to do is actually inverse this. So I'm going to say if it doesn't contain, I think there is a content, and then type. So that would be, I think, from Apache dot, and then yes, exactly. So image.jpg right here. And also I can say content type, oops, dot, and then PNG, content type, dot, and then GIF. There we go. So let me actually just add a static import for all of those. There we go. And this looks much better. So now if it doesn't include any of those, I'm going to throw an illegal state exception. So again, as I said, you could have your own custom exception, but for now, this will be an illegal state exception. But for now, let me simply go ahead and delete all of this and simply say file must be an image. And there we go. So next, let's go ahead and implement whether the user exists in our database. because we're not using a real database, so if I show you the actual database that we have, so data store, fake user profile data store. So this is a in-memory database inside of a list. So because we're not using a real database, we can't issue commands such as, select from, table where the ID equals blah, right? So let's actually go ahead and use some Java streams to filter a particular user based on this ID. So let's go ahead and right here, so at the very top, you see that we have the user profile data access service. So what I'm going to do here is simply say user profile data access service, and let me put this full screen, dot, and then I'm going to say get user profiles, and then dot, and then stream right here. So right here, I'm entering the abstraction phase. So if you want to learn more about streams, check out my website where I've got a full course on streams. It's very powerful and you should be using it in your code base. So right here, let me simply add a new line, the same here. And what I'm going to do is simply say dot and then filter. So I'm going to use the filter function. Right here, we simply have the user profile. And then I'm going to say user profile dot and then get and then profile ID equals and then the actual user profile. So basically I'm saying I'm going to go through this list right here, and then I'm going to filter a user profile which the ID is equal to the one coming from the client. So this one right here. And then I'm going to say dot and then find and then first. And then if we don't find anything, I'm going to say dot and then or else I'm going to throw a new exception. So throw, let's actually throw this exception. So this will be the exception. So I'm going to say new illegal state exception. And then right here, so user, in fact, let me use a format. So string dot format and then equals, and then right here I'm going to say user profile and then %s not found, and then pass the actual user profile ID. There we go. So you can see that this looks really clean, and streams is really powerful. So now what I'm going to do is actually extract everything into a variable, and right here we have the actual profile. So I'm going to say user, so right here. So this is the actual user containing all the information that we need. So if I open up the user profile, you can see that it has the actual ID, a username, as well as the actual link. So there we go. So now we've implemented this third step. Now let's actually grab some metadata from the file, if any. So right here, what I'm going to do is simply say map, and this will be a string, and then a string, and then I'm going to say meta, and then data equals to new, and then hash map. There we go. And now I'm going to say file dot and then get content type. So right here, so you can see that we always get the content type. So I'm going to say let me actually cut that. So I'm going to cut this and then say metadata dot and then put, and then I'm going to say content and then dash and then type, and then paste that. And the same with, so dot and then put and then content dash and then length. So we know that if we get to this part right here, we will have a file, right? Because we are checking whether it's empty or not up above. Now I'm going to say file dot get and then size right here. And obviously this should be a string. So I'm going to say string dot value of, and then the actual size. And there we go. So now we have the actual metadata that we can pass to our method. And finally, let's go ahead and pretty much insert the actual file to our S3 bucket. So right here, so remember that, so if I expand this, we implemented this file store, and the file store has the actual save method. So right here, let me go back and let's actually inject the private final file and then store, and make sure that you implement the one from your package because there are quite a few. So import the very first one. There we go. Add to constructor. And if I put this on a new line, you can see everything properly. Let me go down. And now right here, I'm going to say file store dot, well, actually not file, but file store dot, and then save. So the save will take a couple of things. It will take the actual path, right? So the path will be the actual bucket. So what I want to do really is inside of S3 right here. So you can see that we have an empty bucket, but basically I want to have a folder per user, right? And then in each folder for a specific user, you can see the list of every single uploaded file for that specific user. So basically inside of a bucket, you can simply have folders, right? So we'll have a folder for Antonio and another folder for Janet Jones. So the way that we achieve this is by simply, so let me actually go ahead and simply say string and then dot format. And then I'm going to say that this will take the actual bucket name, and then / that will be the actual folder for the actual user profile ID. So let me simply say % and then s, and then right here, let's go ahead and use our bucket. So I'm going to say bucket and then name dot, and remember we have profile image dot, and then get bucket name, and right here let's pass the user dot, and then get profile ID. So there we go. So this will be the actual path. So this is the path. So let me actually pass the path right here, and then for the file name will be the actual file name plus a random string. So again, let me simply use string dot format, and then right here I'm going to say the file name will be the actual file name, so %s and then dash and then a random UID. So right here simply say file dot and then get name, and then let's actually generate a random UID. So random UID, and there we go. So this will be the actual file and then name. And let me actually pass inside of this save method. So file name. What do we have next? Next, we have the actual metadata. So right here, we can say optional.of and then metadata. And finally, you can see that we have to specify the actual input stream. So this is the actual file. So this will come from file dot and then get input stream. And obviously this throws an exception. So let's actually go ahead and simply surround it with try catch. So we're going to not print this distract trace, but we're going to throw. So I'm going to throw new illegal state exception. And then for now, let's simply say E. So I think we have an error here. So this should be %s. So just like that. And that went away. So there we go. So we've managed to implement all of these 5 steps. So if you have any questions on these, go ahead and drop me a message. But next, let's go ahead and see if everything works according our implementation. As I said, you might have a different implementation than what I have, but if you can achieve the exact same thing in a different way, that is absolutely fine. Next, let's go ahead and test whether we can upload files to Amazon S3. Alright, so we have a bunch of logic inside of this method right here, and you can go ahead and extract this to a method to make it cleaner. But basically, or actually, let's actually do it. So why not? So I'm gonna extract this to a method. So is file empty. So this I think looks much better. So right here, let's go ahead and say is and then image. So right here, let's actually go ahead and simply say, so I'm going to extract all of this to a method. So extract this to a method. So get and then user and then profile or and then throw and then enter. There we go. And then right here, let's go ahead and grab everything, extract to a method. So get, or actually extract meta and then data. There we go. Enter. And I think this should be it. So now you can see that this looks much cleaner and you can read through easily. So now let's go ahead and pretty much just start the application. And what we're going to do is let's go to our front end and let's try and add this image right here. So actually, let me change the order right here so it's not confusing. So let's actually try and upload an image for Janet Jones. So I'm going to grab the image and then I'm going to drop right here and let's inspect the actual console. And it's a bit confusing right here. So we have a file uploaded successfully, but we also have a 500. So let's actually see what is happening. So if I go to the server, so right here, file must be an image. Okay, so let's see exactly what went wrong. So obviously I should have actually printed the actual content type. So is image. So let's go ahead and print the actual image content, or actually content type. So file dot and then get content type. And if I restart the server and then go back, so let's actually upload again, and it's a 500. Let me go back and I can see that it's image and then JPEG. So I think what is happening is that we have a bug. So let me actually collapse this, and this should be dot and then get and then MIME type. So I think this is what gives us the actual MIME type, right? So that's the actual string. So let's add the dot and then get MIME type. Again here, dot get MIME type. So obviously you should have tests around this, and I always add tests if I'm adding stuff like this, because it's really important that you test whether your services do work. So I never push stuff to master or to a branch without having tests. So if you want to learn about testing, go ahead and drop me a message and I'll show you how to test all of this. So now let's go ahead and refactor, or actually restart, not refactor, and let's clear the console right here. Now let's go ahead and try and upload. So I'm going to grab the image and then upload, and this time you can see that no errors, and there you go. Well done. So it means that the file was successfully uploaded to S3. So again, let me also upload the Antonio Jr. So I'm going to grab the file, put it here, and just give it a second. There we go. File uploaded successfully. And now let's actually check the S3 bucket. So if I go to S3 management console and then refresh, and there you go. So you can see that we have 2 folders for each specific user, right? So this right here, 8D. So 8D was Antonio Jr. And then we also have the 38, which is Janet Jones. Now, if I dig into each folder, you can see that we have a file right here. And in fact, the actual file name is incorrect. So let me actually go back and check the other one. And also it simply says file and then the random UID. But in fact, this is an image. So if I click on this image, and then you can see that we have the metadata. And right here, you can see that this was the metadata that we've added. And there we go. You successfully managed to upload a file to a bucket inside of Amazon AWS. So let's actually go ahead and fix a few things here. So what I want to fix right here. So basically what I want to do is actually go back to the user profile service. And I think right here, so where we generate the actual file name. So this, I think right here, so get name, I think this should be get and then original file name. So that will give us that. So in fact, let's go ahead and restart the server. And let me open up the debug mode. Let me cancel out of this. And let me simply collapse this. Let me start the server. Let me go back and let me delete these 2 folders inside of our bucket. So delete. There we go. And now if I go back to my front end, refresh, and then let me actually upload a file for Janet Jones. There we go. And the same for Antonio Jr. There we go. So both successfully. If I go to the console, refresh, you can see that we have the UIDs. If I click on it, and there we go. So this makes more sense now. You can see the file name is Janet Jones JPEG and then the random string. The same for Antonio Jr. right here. And basically, if I upload, so let me go back to the app. So if I upload the file again, that should work. And if I upload it again, that should work. And if I go back to the console and then open up the folder, refresh, you can see that we have 2 files. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that you can keep a history for all the profile pictures uploaded for each user. So you can see Janet Jones 2 files, and the same with Antonio Jr. So there we go. You've managed to successfully upload images from your web app to the Amazon AWS S3 bucket. And this is really, really great. So now you can take all of this and pretty much just incorporate it in your apps. So next, let's go ahead and learn how we're going to be able to download the actual image. So basically right here, we want to get the image. So basically we want to display the uploaded image right here. So let's go ahead and do that next. All right, let's go ahead and learn how we're going to be able to get the image that we've stored inside of Amazon AWS and then retrieve it and show it right here. So what I want to do first is for Janet Jones, I'm going to grab this UID and then go back to our fake user data store. And instead of generating the UID, I'm going to paste that UID there, right? And this should be actually UID and then from string and then paste the UID, because the UIDs, they get generated as soon as we restart the server. So let this actually be oops, not there. So let's actually let the UIDs be fixed. So obviously if you are using a database, all of this is actually solved, but we are using an in-memory database, and this is what happens when you use an in-memory database, right? So now if I restart the server, so now if I restart the server, so let me actually restart the server, and if I go back and then refresh, the UIDs should be the same. So right here you can see that they are the same. So now what we need to do is, so if I open up the user profile service, so right here you see that we saved the actual image, which is absolutely fine, but we haven't updated. So right here, so we haven't updated this field right here, so user profile image link, right? So this is how we will be able to download the actual images for a specific user. And basically right here, this will always be the latest image that we upload for a particular user profile. So if I go back and right here, so remember I said and update database user profile image link with S3 image link. So we already have this. So this is the actual link. So path plus the actual file name. So this and this will give us the actual link for the image. So let's go ahead, and after we save the image, let's go ahead and simply say user dot and then set. So set user profile image link, and for now let me simply add the actual file name. So I'm going to construct this later when we actually download the image, so when we have the method to download the image, because I can always reconstruct this. So there we go. So now we have the file name. Now let me also teach you something. So right here you see that I'm using user and then dot set. So the reason why I haven't added a final, so private and then final right here, as I always do for immutability, is because I'm not using a real database, and I need to have the ability to set these properties. So this is something to keep in mind. And also because I'm not updating the actual ID and username, so let's actually add a final here and final there. And now obviously we can't have these setters, so this is much cleaner in fact. So there we go. So you can see now that this is much better. So let's actually restart the server, because I want you to see this in action. So let's restart the server. There we go. So now if I restart, you can see that nothing has changed. But now if I upload, let's upload a third time. So let's upload this image right here. There we go. So file uploaded successfully. Now, so if I refresh this API call, remember before the user profile image link was null for Janet Jones. So now this should be set with, so right here, if I go to the console, so Janet Jones was this one. So if I refresh, so you can see the latest one is this one right here in the middle. So 3 ending in 3C. So let me actually go back now and then refresh, and you can see that now the user profile image link has been updated, which means that I can now download this and pretty much just show it right here. And that's what we're going to do next. All right, so you can see that we have this link right here that we can simply go to our bucket and retrieve the image. So make sure not to restart the server, because if you restart the server, you will lose this link right here, and then you will have to upload the image again. But all of this is because I'm using an in-memory database, and that's the downside of an in-memory database. So if I'm actually implementing this for real, I would use a real database. And if you want to learn how to connect to a real database with Spring Boot, go ahead and check my videos where I teach all of that. So now let's go ahead and create an endpoint that will allow us to fetch the image from Amazon S3 bucket. So let's go ahead and open up IntelliJ. And what I want you to do is open up the user profile controller. So right here, so let's go ahead and add a method, and right here let's simply say public, and then this will return a byte array, and let's simply say download. Oh, actually, let me copy this. So let me be a bit lazy. So let me simply say down, so instead of up, and then profile image. So right here, what we need is again the actual path variable. So let me put it there, and that's all we need. So now this will be at, and then get, and then mapping. So the path will almost be the same thing. So in fact, let me simply put it there, or actually I don't need all of that. So I think I can just get that and then put it there. And instead of upload, this will be down and then load. There we go. So let me actually expand this. So what we're going to do is simply say user and then profile service dot, and let's actually take this same name and then pass the user profile ID, right? So now let's simply go ahead and return. So we're going to return this to the client. Now let me actually implement this method inside of our service. And what we need to do is the following. So let's actually go ahead and say that we first need to check whether the user exists, right? So let me actually grab this method. So I like to have all the publics in one section and all the private in one section. So what I'm going to do right here is simply, so before I return, I'm going to say get, and then user or else throw, so user profile ID. So right here we have the actual user, right? So this will throw and we will get the actual user. So right here. Now that we have the user, we know that we can fetch the actual profile image. So remember right here where we have the actual path. So we have the path. So let's actually reconstruct the path. So right here, so we have the path, which is the bucket name plus the user dot get profile ID. And now we need the actual file name, which we have from this user. So if I click on it, you can see that we have the user profile image link. So let's go ahead and simply say file store dot and then download. So the download will simply take the full path. So the full path will be string dot and then format and then percent, or actually within quotes, so percent and then s followed by percent and then s. So right here, or in fact, let's actually say full path here, right? So full path, and then this will be / and then percent and then s, and we don't need of this one right here. So let's pass full path, and right here, so let's actually put this on a new line there as well, and we need to pass the user dot and then get the actual link. There we go. So this is the actual full path to the image, and we can simply pass it here. And finally, let's go ahead and simply say return. So now let's go ahead and create this method inside of the file store. So right here we have the full path, and the way that we will download an image from S3 is very simple. So let's let's have a try block, because things can go wrong, and let's also catch. So we're going to catch the Amazon service exception, and then simply say E, and let's simply throw. So right here, so failed to download, right? So now what we need to do is simply say return, and then S3 dot, and then you can see that we have a method called get and then object. So this get object takes two things, takes the path and then the actual key. So in fact, I think that we need to separate the actual path and the key. So let me actually say path, and then this will be a string key. So let's actually pass the path and the actual key. Let's go back where this is called, and let's actually revert this. So we wanted to have that there, remove this one. So this is the actual path, and then we want to have the path. So this will be path, and right here, so we need to do something. So we need to say user dot and then get user profile image link right here. So remember, if this is present, I'm going to say dot and then map. So I'm going to map this to a byte array. So I'm going to get the actual link, and then this will say file store dot download, passing the actual path and then the link. So actually, let me name this key. So this will be the actual key, right? But you get the idea. And then dot or and then else. So let's throw a new and then byte, and then this will be a byte of 0, right? So this looks much cleaner, and let me return this. So as I said, you can go ahead and pretty much just check my website if you want to learn more about streams. But this is how we download a file. So now inside of the download method, so actually I think that we need to, so if I remove this, so let's actually say S3 dot and then get object, passing the path as well as the key. So now with this, we have the S3 object, and now from the object, I can say object dot and then get, and you can see that we have the content. So right here, so content, which is an import stream. So there we go. So now that we have the input and then stream, what we're going to do is simply say IO and then utils dot and then 2-byte array, and then pass the input stream just like that. And basically now I can simply say return, and we have to catch the IO exception right here. And there we go. So let me inline this, and this should be it. So let me actually remove that line, and now I think we are in a good position to test whether we can download a file. Alright, so let's implement the logic in our frontend to download the images from our buckets. So open up VS Code, and this will be very straightforward. So what we need to do is right here, so where we have the actual div, so remember we had the to do. So what we're going to do is very simple. So simply add curly brackets and then say user profile and then dot user profile image ID. So if we have that, we will have an image tag. So image tag, And then the src, so src will be, you should guess it, so this will be almost the same as this one right here. Or actually, where's the download? So right, this one here. So let's grab all of this and then put it here inside. And instead of upload, this will be down and then load. And right here we need to have the else block. Let's actually have no, right? So we either have an image or we don't have an image. So if I refresh that, and user profile ID is not defined, so obviously, so because we need to say user profile, so we need to grab that and then say dot user profile ID. So if I save this, and this is not going to work because it's a 404, and that's because I need to restart my server. So let me restart the server. There we go. And in fact, let me actually cancel this, stop, and then start in debug mode. And let me put the breakpoint actually. So let's actually walk this through. So where we download the image. So let's put the breakpoint right here. There we go. So now if I go ahead and upload, let's upload an image again. And you can see that worked. The same for Antonio Jr. There we go. Now if I refresh this, you can see that we go straight to our backend, and let's walk this through. So we actually have a user and then the path. So let me show you what the path is. So the path is this. So let me put this full. Oh, actually, let me show you here. So this is the path, right? Amigos code, image upload 123, and then this is the actual full path. So remember, so this is the folder. So this is the folder. So 84. So right here. So let me show you exactly what is that. So 84. So if I go back, is this folder. And then inside of that folder, we have the actual. So if I open up the user profile, so the link, so right here ends in 68. So you can see that we have 68 right here. So that should download that file. Now, if I go into this method, so let me put a breakpoint there. So let me continue. You can see that I've hit this breakpoint. Now the key, you can see that the key is correct, right? So 68. And if I step over, there we go. So now we've managed to download the file. So you can see that this is the actual file containing a bunch of information, right? So you can see the metadata inside and the actual content. Now, if I go ahead and simply continue, and let's check the console. So you see that no errors. So if I go back to our front end, and then you can see that we've actually downloaded the actual image. Wow. So you can see that we've downloaded both images. And basically they are really, really big. And what we need to do is to resize them. So if I open up our front end, and what we're going to do is inside of the app.css, so right here, let's go ahead and add some CSS. So for the images that we have, what I'm going to do is simply say width of 300, and then let's actually say that the height will also be 300, and it should be pixels. So 300 pixels, 300 pixels, and let's say object, and then fit, and then cover, and finally let's go ahead and say border dash, and then radius. So we'll have a border radius of 50, and then percent. Oops, 50% there. So now if I save this, and let me actually go back and let me actually mute all breakpoints. There we go. And now if I refresh the application, there we go. So you can see that this is working nice. And in fact, let me actually make this 200. So 200, 200, save that, go to index.js, and then simply say margin, and then top, and let's add a margin top of 100 pixels. So just like that, and let's go back, and voila. So you can see that this is working beautifully. Now I think we are really close to the end, so let me actually show you that. If I go to Pexels and then simply say girl, so let's choose a different picture. So let's say that now she looks like this. So download, and this was what, Janet. Let me simply say Janet, and then let's actually do the same for a boy. There we go. So let's actually say that this is which picture. So let's say that this guy right here. So let's say that this guy right here is Antonio. So free download Antonio, save, and you can see that we have the new pictures right here. And let me go back to the app, and if I now pretty much just change the image, so right here I'm going to drop it, and let's do the same for Antonio. So let's drop both of these images, and you can see that currently we're not refreshing on success, but that is something that you can add on your own and expand on this user interface. So now if I refresh this, you can see that the images did update, and basically this is just working. So as I said, you can pretty much just add a bunch of functionality to your own application, but you can take whatever you've learned in this tutorial to store and download images. So right now we are using React, but for example, if you wanted to store images from your iOS app or Android app, you could definitely do it, right? Because the API is the same. So I think this is all. So right here you can see that we've managed to implement everything that we wanted, right? So if I make this full screen, so you can see right here, so we have the client, we expose an API, and then the service does a bunch of logic, and then we store it to S3, as well as have the profile in a fake database. So obviously, if I restart this, so if I restart the application, I will lose the actual images, right? Because if I go to the fake user profile data store, so right here you can see that this is set to null, right? But you could also grab the actual link and put it here. But if you are doing this for real, please do not use this fake user profile data store. So if you want to learn more about dependency injection, go ahead and check my website, my YouTube videos, where I cover all of that. This is all for now, and let's wrap up things. All right, so thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this course. Now, as you saw, saving images, it's a really, really cool thing that you should be aware of how to do it, right? Because nowadays we are storing lots of information about users. And to be honest, we are storing, nowadays we are storing files, you are storing content. You could even store videos, right? You can store anything you want with what we've built, because after all, we are sending a file as an input stream and then you storing that into the S3 bucket, and you can pretty much just store whatever you want. So it was a pleasure teaching you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe, because it will help me to do more videos like this. Also, if you have any questions or suggestions, go ahead and message me. This is all for now, and I'll catch you on the next one.